stories don't define you. How you tell them will.
Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and Chief Storymaker at Elkins Consulting. In my work with coaching clients, I guide people to improve their communication using storytelling as the foundation of our work together. What I've realized over years of coaching and podcasting is that the majority of people don't realize the impact of the stories they share on their internal messages and on the people they're sharing them with. My work with leaders and people who aspire to be leaders follows a similar path to the interviews on my podcast, uncovering pivotal moments in their lives and learning how to share them to connect more authentically with others, to make their presentations and speaking more engaging, to reveal patterns that have kept them stuck or moved them forward, and to improve their relationships at work and at home. When you're ready to get started collecting your own stories, my book, Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will, is available in all the regular places, and the audiobook version is now available on Google Play and on my website, elkinsconsulting.com. As a special bonus for listeners, the audiobook includes 2 songs recorded by my band, Spare Change, in my living room in Montana. Keep an eye out for announcements through LinkedIn and via my Elkins Consulting Facebook and Instagram pages, or visit my website, elkinsconsulting.com, to learn more. Also on my website is a free podcast interview checklist. It's available to download to make sure you make the most of your next podcast interview.
It's my pleasure today to introduce Anna Cley to my listeners of Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will podcast. And as I have always appreciated, this podcast guest comes to me by referral from Shelley Brown, who is a dear, dear friend. And when she says, you need to meet my friend Anna Cley, I say, absolutely, I'm in. So Anna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be with you.
Well, just to put things in context a little bit, can you tell me a little bit about what's meaningful to you, the work that you do that's really meaningful to you right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm very passionate about making a difference into the world and bringing, as much light as possible. So that people know a little bit about me when they hear this podcast. I'm an opera singer. I am a former rocket scientist. I'm now a creative and vocal artist, and I'm the CEO of a nonprofit, Vocalise, that was founded last year to instill courage and hope into children impacted by trauma.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Especially because that project, children who are impacted by trauma, I would say that probably the majority of children right now have been impacted by the trauma of this year. That's going to have long-term consequences.
Yes. In fact, of course, everybody has their own experience, and some sounds worse than others. But the truth is, everyone on earth has a history of trauma one way or the other. I believe it's very important to instill the seeds into children so that they know that it's not because the world has been dark until now that the rest of their life is going to be that way. Their dreams are possible if they believe. I think it's very important to have them feel empowered, because if people are happy, the rest of the world is happier. If someone is feeling fulfilled in their life, they will be more likely to help others. And so that's why it's so important to do that work, especially with children,
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by this. I had looked this up when I started researching my guest for today, and I hadn't quite put this together as I was looking through your website and all of the materials. One of my more interesting podcast episodes, I've had over 100 interesting podcast episodes. One of them was a woman who has studied, it's basically, what did she call it? It's genetically disposed PTSD. Mm-hmm. So basically, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of people who have been through specific traumas, sometimes they have generational PTSD. And one of the things that I came across as I was researching that particular podcast guest was a scientist who studied the grandchildren of Holocaust victims. And even though they weren't Holocaust victims themselves, they demonstrated certain aspects of PTSD, even if they didn't even know their grandparents. So it was generationally programmed through their genetics.
Absolutely. So it's been proven in recent years that when there's been a trauma such as a rape in previous generation, it's marked in the DNA for 2 to 3 generations. And so the thing is, and that's why it's so important, I believe, so there is still a lot of research to do in that area, but I believe that we carry the weight of previous generations that have not done the work, the healing work. And there is what we experience in our own lifetime. And obviously some behaviors we can actually remember, but there is another layer that's because our parents, our grandparents didn't do the work. And so if we want to bring something to our children, we do need to heal, because I believe if it has an effect in one way, it can have another one the other way, meaning why not? Like if you're like very happy, why would that not be possible to transmit that happiness genetically as well? I mean, if it goes one way, why not the other way, you know? So
absolutely.
Yeah, there are so many layers of why it's important to heal and be happy, you know.
And to find what works for you to address that tension and the immediate release of cortisol when you think about a particular thing. And one of the studies was done on women and their children, the women who were pregnant during Superstorm Sandy, and the trauma they experienced, and the higher level of cortisol that was a natural level of cortisol in their newborn infants and into their toddler years. And depending on the circumstances of their birth and the last few months of the pregnancy, it's just fascinating. So hopefully we'll talk about this at some point in the next 40 minutes or so. But I'd like to come back to that. The first question I normally ask, this has been so interesting. There's no reason to interrupt, but I really like asking my podcast guests to share something about themselves that most people don't know. And because we've already kind of started this conversation, do you have something related to that would complement what we've already talked about?
Actually, you know, I mean, this is what we were discussing before, just choosing what most people don't know. There are many things when you think about it. But I think one thing that's very important for me, and that might not be obvious when people meet me, is my relationship with nature. Because I'm an opera singer, I'm used to stage. I had all these years of, you know, classical music training. Because I was a rocket scientist and I worked for the French Space Agency, etc. People see me in a way that is actually not really who I am, because who I am is extremely simple. What makes me the most happy in the world is spending time in nature, is being alone and looking at the stars, or seeing a deer and having this moment of connection with a wild animal. Or like even recently I was in the mountains and I spent some time just looking at the landscape with a bird that was on a tree, and we were looking in the same direction, and the bird could have fly away, but he stayed. And we were there looking in the same direction, and it was beautiful. And that's what I love the most in life, this moment of connection with the essence of life. Yeah. And another thing I love about nature is how you find all the answers. You know, life seems very complex sometimes, but it's not. When you look at nature, how trees grow and flower, and the cycles of winter and spring, etc. We go through all these cycles ourselves. We push the limits, the instinct we have to be alive, to survive. You see that in plants. You see flowers growing out of walls, of stones. I'm always amazed at all the grass and trees that you can see in the cities, and they overcome obstacles, and we do the same. We want to rise. It's in our nature to rise, to look for water and to look for sun, to look for light and to exist. And so that's what really passionates me, I believe. Yeah.
I love that answer. It's a perfect answer. And it kind of leads right back full circle to your Vocalese nonprofit, which is, I know that this is where my children find great solace, is being outdoors. And granted, they grew up in Montana. If you don't like being outdoors, you're in the wrong place, because Montana there's not a lot of other stuff to do other than be outdoors and enjoy nature. But I can imagine, and I know that there are programs that put children or young adults into uncomfortable conversations with nature in order to help them heal and grow. And there's I can't remember, I think it's called Outward Bound or Upward Bound. There are programs that people send their teenagers to spend 10 days to 2 months out in nature without any access to technology. And you have to learn to basically make your life safe and comfortable in nature without any of what we normally have: plumbing, electricity. And there's so much success in that. So is Vocalese, is that taking into account your love for nature? I mean, is this a programming around that?
No, there isn't. In fact, Vocalese was born because I had something to offer, and I could not find existing charities where I could really give what I wanted to give, what I was ready to give. So I started to volunteer in hospitals for children in my early 20s on Sundays when I was an engineer. And what happens, I really just wanted to serve. I couldn't find meaning in my job, and I was miserable. Then I went on hospitals on Sundays, and you go to help, and what's the result is that it brings you more than you give. And and then I just reached a point where I just couldn't go back to work. I burned out. My true calling, or I don't know if it's exactly that, but singing entered into my life very early on, and I wanted to pursue this career as I was encouraged by my teacher, but my family did not encourage, and that's why I became an engineer, and I did not have a choice. In fact, it's a long story that I don't think it's a place to share here today, but after leaving engineering, I thought it was too late for opera singing. I was 26, and even if it sounds young, it's actually pretty old to start a career. My blessing is that I do have a powerful big voice of a mezzo-soprano and not a soprano. So in that case, careers can start later. So what happened is that I came back to singing, and because I wanted to serve, because I wanted a meaningful life. I know I'm not answering directly to your question because you wanted to see the connection with nature, but there is no short answer to that because when I was a teenager, I did my first competitions, my first concert, and I was extremely shy, introverted, and I would close my eyes when I performed. That's how shy I was. And when people applaud, I wanted to just run away,
Disappear.
Yes. I was living my music, but it was not about performing. It was about beauty and emotion. And so people, exactly. And people would come from the audience afterwards to tell me they cried, like adults, and any age, and they talked about their goosebump. Or I had my first experience of being recognized in the streets back in France when I was maybe 15, 14, or you just go buy your bread and you're very shy and you're hiding yourself in your big clothes, and was it you the other day? And yes, and I looked older, so I was still very young, emotionally shy, So, but they didn't know. People didn't know. And so the long story short is that singing and this journey through opera and embodying my body and learning to use my instrument and to find this power, I came back to it to give back, to give to people because of the feedback I remembered for younger years. And it actually healed me, which I realized in recent years. I did it to give and to allow, and it has been the greatest healer for myself. People always say that I have a striking presence, and like they can see that even before I open my mouth or I sing. And so it's how come how far I went from where I was. It's been a beautiful journey. So Vocalise, I created it because I wanted to bring something else, something that used both storytelling and the power of music to plant seeds of hope, courage, self-love, self-respect, using a story. And I'm also passionate about hypnosis and trained in hypnosis. And I did want to infuse messages the same way you would do in hypnosis, but through a story. So combine all these effects, so therapeutic, obviously. And so the program that is in development is The Journey of the Heart. That's based on my book. And we are going to adapt it in a musical tale. And the other program that we have is workshops to help victims of abuse re-embody their body. Because I've been developing this work, for people, not just people who suffered abuse, but actually anyone, entrepreneurs, speakers, people who need to share their message with the world. Because if you just change the posture of your body and the way you breathe and the way you place your voice, not only you build your self-confidence, but you also change the way people see you. So that is something that has to be used by victims of abuse. Why? Because a big question I had all these years is, how do you break patterns? Victims of pedophilia is often found in porn movies or prostitution. They are abused and raped again. It's very sad, but this is what's happening all the time. And
I think they go on to abuse others because of their experience as well, in many cases.
I have to disagree with that. I think it's a very strong general belief, but I can tell you that I personally met a lot of people who have been abused in their life, and they never abused anyone, ever. So I have sadly heard
experiences where it was the opposite.
I'm sorry to hear. It does happen, but it's actually, I think...
It's not common, though.
It's not common. It's actually 10%, I believe. We'd have to, check this information, but I think it's only 10% of those victims who become abuser. But the general belief is that it happens most of the times. So it does happen. It's true, but it's not a majority. So, all of this is important, obviously.
Well, that's a good myth to be acknowledging at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess part of the reason I asked what the connection was with nature is because I know that when I am in nature, that sometimes I feel more comfortable to use my voice.
I see. Yes.
So I remember when I was training a young girl for her bat mitzvah, and I was helping her in singing because she was nervous about singing in front of an audience. And I asked her why she was nervous. I said, "Do you like to sing?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, where do you sing?" And she said, "In the shower." I said, "Where else?" She said, "When I'm alone." I said, "Well, why don't you sing in front of people?" I said, "Why don't you sing in front of people?" And she said, "Because I don't think I have a very pretty voice." And of course, I said, I've been working with you for months and you do have a pretty voice. So of course I told her that's not really what matters, that she has a pretty voice. And I said, you sing because you like to express yourself. And that's what matters. And then I said, most of us who sing, most of the professional vocalists I know, don't sing because we think we sound good. We sing because we can't not sing. It's how we express ourselves. It's how we find our confidence. It's how we find our way out of difficult circumstances. And it's a beautiful way to express ourselves. And even if you don't think you have a good voice, when you express yourself with your heart through your singing, it doesn't matter. People hear that. They hear your heart. And so that afternoon when we had this conversation, I took her for a walk on the mountain near my house. And I had her sing out near where there were some rocks so that she could hear the echo and the acoustics of singing in nature. So when you were telling me about your love for nature and what I knew about your Vocalese nonprofit, it just like put the two together in a very visual way for me. So thank you for bringing back that memory.
Yeah, I can see that. It's actually something I like to do, is to test my voice in nature. Because, the surroundings are different, so it may sound different. What's amazing about voice and is that we have our inner voice, and our inner voice is different from what people hear. The inner ear and the outer ear is completely different, which is why when someone hears their own voice, they usually don't like it when they hear a recording.
Exactly.
Like, I don't like my voice. Yeah, because it's very foreign. They cannot recognize what it is. It's not what they hear usually. So there's that. And then when you're in a different space, the acoustic is different. So that's also a very interesting. And yeah, I like to try things as well.
That's great. So it's interesting. You said that your childhood was a different story for another time. But what I'd really like to hear, now that I'm even more intrigued by this, when you were an engineer and something must have happened beside going to a hospital, or maybe when it was at a hospital, that made you realize it was time to go, that it was time to change from being an engineer. Was there a pivotal conversation you had with somebody that was the trigger? How did you pull the trigger to get out of engineering, to quit your job?
So when I was a child, I was passionate about astrophysics. I was passionate about the meaning of life. Where are we coming from? Why are we here? Why am I here? I always thought I was an alien because I didn't feel I belonged to this planet, and there probably was a mistake or something. I looked at the stars and I was trying to understand why I was here. And besides, galaxies and stars are beautiful, and it's so huge and incredible. So I was passionate about that. And singing happened in my life, which is a big moment. And so when I became an engineer, I already knew I would not be happy. I already knew it was not a job for me because I'm someone who needs action. I cannot sit in front of a computer. That's not a life for me. I already knew I love nature. I love to be out. I love movement. I love to meet people. I already knew. But I did specialize in aerospace because I thought maybe I can find a compromise. Maybe in a way I can make it work. The problem is engineering studies and engineering work is extremely technical. And so all the spiritual side, all the spiritual quest, interest, was out of the work. And I could not connect emotionally with my colleagues, and I could not connect with my work. It was just the whole thing just didn't work for me. Plus, there was a lot of harassment at work, which I didn't know. I didn't know yet at the time how to name it. It actually took me some time to understand what it was. So there's been a number of conditions that made me burn out. And someone at some point during this burnout said, if you believe, you can make things happen. I was 26. No one ever had said that to me. And I had no idea that there was that type of something else. And yeah, it did help. That's for sure. Actually, I thanked him again recently. Absolutely. It's been actually an important moment in my life. An important person for sure. You need someone to tell you that at some point.
Mm-hmm. Was this person who worked with you, or somebody in a family friend, or how did this happen? This conversation with somebody that you obviously have great respect for?
It's my stepfather.
Oh, okay.
My mother remarried when I was 25.
Mm-hmm. So, and your stepfather said you're miserable, and if you believe that something could change, you can change it. Is that basically?
He said, if you believe in your dream, you can make it happen.
Wow. Do you remember where you were sitting when you had that conversation?
No, I don't.
You just remember the words, and you remember them coming from him. Do you remember his voice?
Yes. No.
How? No,
I
just the words.
Yes.
Ah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yes.
Huh. I wonder if you had heard it before, but you weren't ready to hear it, or if you heard it later.
No, and then I can tell you, no one ever said that to me.
No one ever said that to you.
100%. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I was ready to hear that all my life.
Oh, so what did you do immediately after that happened, after that conversation?
Well, so what happened is that I quit my job. That was the number one thing. And I had a project in mind. And I had a project in mind of creating a business that would be meaningful and align with my values. So after quitting my job, I started a training to learn how to build a business. And comes day one of the training and then morning of the day two, and I realize it's actually another compromise, that I'm looking for a way to make a difference when I already have everything. So what happened, and I have a huge moment here, is that even if I stopped singing the last year of study in engineering, I always kept my scores with me. So I stopped singing for 4 years, the last year of study plus the 3 years I worked in the space industry. And always my scores were in a box, moving with me.
And let me explain for our listeners, the scores are the music, the sheet music that you use, correct?
Yeah. Yes. And so what happened is that I can't remember if it's the evening of the first day. I think it was the night of the first day or the second day. But anyway, I don't know why, but I was called to open my scores. And I take my scores and I have this huge epiphany, like you receive a message from spirit,
universe,
God, I don't know how to name it, but like it was huge. And I cried so much because I realized in that moment that I kept pushing away my true gift and that I was not allowing my talent. And so in the project I had initially, so I was looking for ways to make a difference, and something I wanted to use in my business were Tibetan bowls, singing bowls. I don't know if you
I've heard
see
of
what
them.
I mean, right? Okay. So these bowls are amazing. So because they have this healing sound that's extraordinary. And in that moment, I realized that I am one. I am a singing bowl. Like I have the voice that makes people heal and cry. I just from all the memories I had, and I was so shy and I was not accepting so much, the stage experience. Singing was natural to me. It was normal. I had this gift, but I don't know. I just did it. And that was a huge moment. And so that's where I decided I had to go back to singing and make it happen.
You are a Tibetan singing bowl. You know what I love about that? I have a very vivid imagination. And so when people tell me something, I immediately have a vision of it. And I'm a far more visual learner than anything else. And I'm imagining I'll link to the Wikipedia explanation of the Tibetan. I think they call them singing balls, right? Tibetan.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I see that sometimes people resonate more with one term than the other. So, but yeah.
Right. So I will also the singing balls. I'll also include maybe YouTube video so people can hear what they sound like. Mm-hmm. But what I always thought about those, and I saw them in a museum and at a musical museum or a gallery with musical instruments and stuff. And what struck me about them was the vibration of them, not just the sound that came from them, but the energy that emanated from them to create this vibration. And for our listeners, there's also the other related thing that I always think of when I think of those is the Tuvan throat singers, where they can have multiple tones, pitches come out of their mouth and nose. So they're basically harmonizing for themselves. Mm-hmm. And they do the circular breathing so that they can just continue to make this noise. Like you do circular breathing for a didgeridoo in Australia. And there are these things from all over the world that all have this in common, that it's not just a pitch. It's not just a tone that's coming out. It's emanating energy that creates a vibration. Mm-hmm. And when you told me that, I got a chill because I was imagining the vibration that you're sharing. It's another visual that pops into my head is when you drop a pebble in the water and you see the ripples come around it. Mm-hmm. It's that same sense of exuding that energy and light and healing people as it flows through them and over them.
Yes. Well, what is very interesting in opera singing in particular is that the journey of the opera singer is to free their voice. There is no faking. A real opera singer, someone who sings well, has a free voice. What is it? A free voice is to have an open throat, to have a lot of space in the mouth so the voice really goes out. And that has to be supported by your breathing system. And you use all the natural resonators of your body, such as cheekbones, for instance. So opera singing is extremely rich in harmonics. It has all these layers of sound. In one sound, you have the chest voice and the head voice. And that's why you do not need a microphone in all these huge rooms, because your sound travels really well. It's going to resonate with the acoustic of the room, of the hall. And so coming back to the singing bowls, what makes it so special is this richness in harmonics that you found in the sound. So, and this vibration, actually vibration is a term I love. And what makes music so special is vibration, because why is music such a unique art form? Because this vibration can go through you, you want it or not. It's like someone who's deaf will still get the vibration in his or her cells. You cannot do that with paintings or dance or anything like that. Like music, this vibration can harmonize cells, can harmonize atoms. You can see that with crystals of water. I mean, there are fascinating experiences with that. But yeah, music, the sound is special, and it can have this beautiful, healing, empowering effect. It can also have noise, destructive effect, which Absolutely. Is why cities are so stressful, which is why some type of music that you hear a lot on the radio generate more aggressiveness or violence, or, it awakens feelings. So they can be positive or negative. And sometimes classical music has been used in train station or some schools. I know they do that in China. And it actually reduces the aggressiveness of people, just because the vibration is good. Something like that.
Yes, I love that. So tell me, I'm imagining, my eyes are closed, I'm imagining you pulling this box of your scores, all your music, out of the closet where they've been stored for 4 years. Do you remember the first one you pulled out? You said you were crying as you pulled out that music with that aha.
I do not remember. I do not remember the exact circumstances. I really remember the feeling of connection, like spiritual connection in that moment, and the feeling of warmth, and that it's where I'm meant to be. It's more what I recall, and what it was, I really don't know. It was probably one of the first scores I sang when I was 12. I don't know. I cannot say. So,
it's funny, the way that you remember is so, it's a unique way of remembering things. The fact that you remember your stepfather's words, but you don't remember how he said them or where you were sitting or anything about the circumstances around it. But what I'm hearing, and in this case also with the music, is that you remember the feelings of it. You remember how you felt. You described it as feeling a warmth, a sense of belonging when you pulled that box of music out. And so you don't remember the visuals of it, but you remember how you felt, which goes right along with the whole vibration discussion that you just shared.
Yes. I mean, I don't know what you will remember from this conversation, but the most important thing in my life has always been my spiritual quest. And in this spiritual quest, we're talking about oneness with something greater than us, or oneness with humanity, feeling others, intuition. And I guess that's why my memories are like this. And because it's who I am. I'm very connected to nature, to the world, to particle of air, probably more than the physical reality. We're talking about expansion, this expansion that I've been looking for in astrophysics, through music, and also through hypnotic trance. It's connecting with your higher self, with a higher consciousness. It's with the meaning of life, the energy of life, the force of life. So I guess that's why.
Wow. You've given me a lot to think about in the last 10 minutes. My brain is just flooded right now. When you try to start your car and you flood the engine with gas and then it doesn't start. That doesn't really happen much anymore in current cars, but in my old VW Bug, it happened pretty often back in my teen days. Anna, just to kind of turn this back full circle and tie a bow on it, I would love to hear what you're promoting right now, what you're working on right now that our podcast listeners can look up, can explore with you. What would you want an audience to hear from you?
Well, I have a lot of content actually available right now or soon available. My last album, Opera in Code, was out in July. It's available on all digital platforms, Pandora, Deezer, Spotify, etc. I also have a forthcoming book, The Journey of the Heart, that it took me 7 years to finalize between the vision and the actual script, final script. And the beauty of it is that I finalized it last month, and I got an offer from a publisher the same day that I sent my script. I think it's very rare because I always hear stories of people who are struggling with that. And I just got an offer right away. And it's a small publisher, but I'm extremely happy because we're very aligned. I feel heard, and she loves what I do. And it's going to be a beautiful collaboration, you know. I took some time before accepting. And I had another option, actually. Out of the 3 publishers I contacted, I had 2 offers, so it was pretty good.
That is highly unusual. Congratulations.
Yeah. So anyway, there will be a lot done, I think, around that next year. All my work can be found on annacley.com, ANNACLEY.com, and you'll find there links to my music, links to the book, and also links to an e-course to empower you through breathing and voice. And I have more work in development. I'm very excited about it. We are going to create some immersive experience on a new platform. So more to come next year. If you want to follow me, just subscribe to my newsletter. And I'm also the new creative director and vocal artist for My Hope Bear. My Hope Bear does teddy bear that are used to calm emotion, and I'm going to create the music for this to calm emotion. So it's really a wonderful project. I'm an artist in residence for the Graduate Institute in Connecticut. Anyway, so everything can be found on annacley.com. And, you know, I wish for your audience to feel free to reach out to me. That's
definitely. And I will have the link to her website on the blog post associated with this podcast, as well as some other links and information that we referred to during our conversation. Anna, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. The book of the same title is now available, and the audiobook version will be released in November 2020. If you're ready to uncover your stories and learn to uncover the stories of the people around you to create stronger connections and healthier communities, visit elkinsconsulting.com. And while you're visiting the website, you can learn more about the book and the work we do to improve communication among teams and through our one-to-one coaching. Thank you.
Now listen to me, honey, while I say, how could you tell me that you're going away?